Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to this week's second installment of our Fuse Network Ask Me Anything session. That's right, we've got loads of questions this week. So you're here with me, Ian Kane, and in this session, we'll be chatting with the Arcana Network. The date is Friday, 17th of June. I hope everyone's doing well out there this week. It's been a bit of a strange week. I say strange, I probably should say the word depressing. Crypto drops are not cheering many people up right now, but hey, we've seen all these things before. For the more battled hardened of us out there, we know what's coming. So yeah, it's time to get our heads down and build. Markets move in cycles, remember, not always going up. Just a reminder that we always record these sessions for later digestion or to unpack, or for you guys to unpack any of the more complex topics that we dive into during the session. Just head over to the Fuse Network YouTube channel and you'll find everything you need. Just a couple of days after we do the session here live, you'll find it over there on YouTube. So let's do a quick sound check, shall we? Aravindh, do I have you there?
All clear, Ian?
Nice, man. Good stuff. How are you doing today? You okay?
Doing fantastic. Thank you so much for putting this together.
All good, all good. I'm very excited to jump into this topic. So let me plow through some admin bits and bobs, and then we will jump straight in. So firstly, guys, this is an AMA. So we've been collecting questions, plus I've got a whole heap of my own for our guest, and we'll endeavor to go through all of those. Still, if you're out there in the audience and you have questions, just put up your hand and we'll bring you on the stage for a moment of glory and you can ask your question. Make sure to listen now. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff here today. So if your question is covered, just make sure you're listening out, all right? No worries if you're a bit shy, just ping a message into the Fuse Discord server and we'll try and get that question answered for you as well. So for those of you that don't already know, maybe this is the first time you've tuned into a Fuse Network AMA session. Fuse Network is a unique blockchain. It aims to bridge the gap between crypto and the real world. The platform has its own features and tokens that will help you, dapp developers also, in creating a crypto economy. They have been in the blockchain space for a long time and are also working tirelessly to upgrade their products and features as we move into what we like to call the builders market. For example, you can use Fuse Cash to create your own token that you can then use in your community as a token with monetary value to pay for services and features. The approach that Fuse takes to bringing crypto payments and DeFi to the masses, it just empowers projects, businesses, organizations, and communities to adopt crypto in an easy, simple way. With that in mind, it's time to welcome today's special guest to the stage. It's a pleasure to welcome the co-founder of Arcana, Aravindh Kumar. Fuse integrated Arcana recently, so we're here to talk about that partnership, how it looks in the real world, some recent updates, and why it's a great move for both Fuse and Arcana. So in a nutshell, Arcana provides social account dapp logins and convenient storage, decentralized storage. From our side, the Fuse team is delighted to announce this integration with Arcana to facilitate decentralized storage, identity, and access management, as well as private key management. So any team building a dapp on Fuse Network now has access to these tools. So Aravindh, let's dig straight in, man. I want to get into the features, into the services. But first thing I always like to do, I want to get a better idea about you, man. Like, who are you? How did you end up in this crazy blockchain Web3 world? What's your background, man? Tell us a bit about yourself, Aravindh.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Ian. Really love the energy and look forward to it. So we started working on blockchain crypto back in 2017. It was about 3 of us. We used to work together at a previous organization and found it very interesting. The use cases that were possible. And of course, back then they were just ICOs and Ethereum was just gaining steam. And so we are partly just dabbling in the upcoming ICOs, and majority of our time went into hackathons, building proof of concepts, just trying to see what can we do, right?
Yeah.
And did that for about a year and a half, got fairly comfortable, and then realized that in the process of trying to build all these POCs, there were fundamental problems that existed, right, which are at the infra layer, right? And then we realized that even if Web3 were to become popular, and all these new social applications and consumer apps moved to Web3, the infra just does not exist to support them in production, right? And that's how we started off with a small team of about 3 of us as co-founders to build that infra layer first for other developers to build more robust applications on top of. So it was a very slow process. compared to the crypto cycles that we took a long time to arrive at a thesis, etc. But it has only strengthened our conviction to go through a bear market and now go through another bear market, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've survived the first, you're a veteran of the first bear market, so that's a great, like a badge on your sleeve, I would say. So that's awesome. And then
Yeah,
to
I
enter
like to say it on my Twitter that I was in Web3 before it was called Web3, right? So there are so
it.
many types of narratives float around.
I mean, it was a weird time at that time, at 2017, as you said. Ethereum was just getting going. Smart contracts were just kind of becoming a thing. And so, what was your sort of first introduction to the world of crypto? You said you dabbled in a few tokens there, ICOs. What was it? Let me give you a more solid question. When did you first learn about Bitcoin and Ethereum?
So interestingly, back in 2014 or 15,
Oh,
when I was writing my paper for my engineering, it was on Bitcoin, right? But back then, I thought Bitcoin was just one of the many other P2P technologies that existed, didn't think too much in depth about it. And that was the first introduction to Bitcoin for me personally.
okay.
And after that, it really picked up back in 2017.
It was an interesting time, and I think a lot of people jumped on. Very cool, very cool. So, can you tell us about what kind of motivates the team at Arcana today, and like what gets you all out of bed in the morning? What's your big kind of ethos here with Arcana?
Absolutely. I think for us as a vision, it has always been not just what problems we can solve for our customers, but to their users at large, right? And it has always been around data ownership and data privacy,
Hmm.
right? And I still fundamentally believe that one of the core tenets of decentralization is it gives power to people and have a say in what they're participating in. And today we have these incentives and business models where users are typically disenfranchised.
Yeah.
And that means that either they do not have the agency or they do not have the tools to exercise them, right? And this also percolates to developers because even if a developer wants to do the right thing, they currently do not have the tools to be able to do them, right? Even if they decided to solve the design challenges and the business model problems of ad incentivized ecosystem we are in now, they do not have the infrastructure to be able to do it, right? So for us, it has always been that privacy is right, and every product should be built with privacy first principles. And we want to see a world where users really feel empowered and own their data and are at the center of any decision that happens around the data. That can only happen when it's not just written in some legal contract or a privacy policy, but embedded in code and enforced in code.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, nice. Well, that's a pretty good reason to get out of bed in the morning, I would say, Arvin. But just listening to the kind of what we're talking about at this early stage, it's occurred to me that in the world of decentralized apps in dapps, that we may have kind of leapt ahead of ourselves slightly in regards to aiming for mass adoption. It appears that everybody got pretty excited about what services and products to deliver to customers, but didn't think that much about onboarding. And that's something that I've watched over the years, and I can't agree with you more that it is vital that those sticky points of onboarding need to be solved. And for me, I don't know if you agree here, like it just feels like we all went a bit quick. And now we've come back around, and it's like, as I said at the beginning, time to build, time to understand more about how to gain mass adoption and understand customers, right? Do you agree with that?
No, absolutely. And I think we didn't really jump too fast, but I would say, in fact, maybe uh, Web3 and crypto at large have solved that problem faster than we would have expected. To
Yeah.
backtrack a little, uh, end-to-end encryption has been around for almost 20, 30 years now, right? That's perhaps three decades. PGP, one of the most popular protocols for encrypting end-to-end encryption, has existed, I think, since the 90s. And for anybody, any developer wanting to build truly end-to-end encrypted product, the first problem was that users need to own keys for
Yeah.
true end-to-end encryption, but users do not want to own keys, right? And that has largely gone unsolved because there were workarounds where you could do it from the server side, you could do some backups, do 2FA, etc., to sort of federate that key storage and exchange. But what has happened in Web3 is now there is an economic incentive for us to figure out that problem, because users need to own keys, but they also need to not feel the burden of owning and managing them. So what we weren't able to really solve for the last 20 years, I would say we have tried to solve in the last 3 years.
Like the technology caught up with the innovation of people's minds. Like we had these ideas, but not a way to solve them. Yeah, that's a good point, man. Very good point.
Yeah,
All right.
and that is now percolates not just in Web3, and I see it utility going beyond Web3 to even Web2 companies who want to now give keys, whether it could be say WhatsApp, Signal, or anyone else, to be use the same cryptographic primitives that the builders in Web3 have figured out how to commercialize.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a very what you've said there is it hits me, and that I always think of that line from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And it's like human beings and people do want to take back power of an ownership of what they control, especially financially. But it appears to me that at the same time that they want to do that, we're not giving them an easy way to do it, and it's too difficult.
Yeah.
A little bit too complicated. And ultimately, I feel like, if we're going to onboard the next million, billion people into this, it can't be this difficult, basically. So that leads me to talk about the kind of differences between Web 2 and Web 3 in regards to kind of data storage, and what are the key differences that people should be aware of out there between Web 2 and Web 3. Maybe first of all, Aravindh, you might want to actually define your definition of Web 2 and Web 3 for people that are a bit like, what the hell's Web 2 and 3?
Yeah, for me, it's without going into the math of what's purely Web 2 and what's purely Web 3. I think in Web 2, you have users who create value to a network, and that value is captured by a set of players in the network. It could be advertisers, it could be the platform that owns the network, etc. And then that value is then disseminated to people who want to monetize it, right? It could be a data broker, it could be an agency that's looking at running campaigns, or advertisers, etc. And on the tech side, very client server architecture, where there is a defined set of nodes who can run, operate, and manage that node, and everyone else are consumers to that, and different platforms give differential access to their partners based on their goals,
Okay.
right? So I think it's more at a social level, who has authority in that network and what sort of decisions do they have. And typically these are very verbal exchanges, right, or legal exchanges of the agreements they arrive at. Versus in Web3, it is not just participating in the network, but also owning piece of the network, right? And second is resiliency. Who can attack it, who can join and leave, and who decides the decisions that are ultimately enforced on the network. And at a technology layer, I see it as more peer-to-peer, where there is no clear client-server architecture. There could be gradations in the capabilities of every participant, whether you are a light client, you're a full node, etc., or a validator. But you have the option to move along that ladder of control over the network as you choose, and freely join and leave. And users themselves are in control of the contribution and the reward that subsequently comes, right? To give a very plain analogy, in say a Web2 equivalent of say Facebook, right, or YouTube, chunk of the revenue goes to YouTube, right? Versus say in Web3, like OpenSea. I mean, of course, it's debatable whether people consider OpenSea purely Web3 or not. But fundamentally, as a business model, bulk of the revenue goes to the creators and the customers of the platform, and OpenSea charges a small fraction of the transaction. Right? And I think that is a key difference of how value is captured in Web3 versus Web2. And that's, I think, what also excites more people to build on Web3 versus Web2, even though there could be technological benefits on doing on Web2.
Definitely. That's a really good explanation, Arvin, I think, of both Web 2 and 3. And yeah, I agree with you entirely. But in terms of the kind of so data storage, so when we look at the differences between 2 and 3, and even now, and you said there quite rightly about OpenSea, people question it because they're using Web 2 store. A lot of blockchain companies are actually using Web 2 type storage, but it's extremely expensive. And then yeah, let's just talk about some of the differences here and like in terms of data storage in Web 3.
Sure. So I think to preface it with why do we need decentralized storage, right? There are two anecdotal uh, ex examples that I can give. One is AWS cost of storage has been dropping uh, by what I would say 80 to 90% in the last 5 to 7 years, right? But the pricing hasn't changed. Right? Storage is a commodity and going to be further cheaper or perhaps even free, but the pricing has not changed, right? Because they decide the price of the infra that they run. And sure, that might tie into their business model, etc. But fundamentally, that is a huge gap.
Yeah.
I mean, you see such drastic reduction in prices, but the infra costs the same.
Mhm.
Second is, I'm not sure if you have heard of or you remember this, where some region in AWS went down and then people couldn't open their fridge.
Yes.
So it was
Yeah.
some that S3 region, right? And it's, do we want to live in a world where a data center goes down and your garage door doesn't work, right?
No, not at
It's,
all. Like where they have the ability to brick something that you own basically from distance.
yeah,
Doesn't
and
sound
that's
good.
such a fragile uh, society to live in. And I think the major difference between these two is resilience to attacks and changes to the network,
Mm.
where in the centralized data centers, there are clearly defined regions and operators and protocols for running them. But in Web3, it is more peer to peer, right? And as the network gets attacked or goes down, the math and the cryptography that govern these nodes that are participating ensures that they are always up and running, right? And that can only happen at scale if it is decentralized and allows multiple people to participate, right? Maybe let's say if AWS and some other cloud provider work together and said, hey, in case this region goes down, you also have a data center in your region. Let's have some inbuilt redundancy so that we can take care of each other. But the uh, the game theory of competition will prevent them from doing that, right? But in P2P, they all have to work together for what's best for the network.
That makes
So
a lot
that's
of
one.
sense.
The second is around access. Who gets to run and own these networks? And when you end up running them, you have the incentive to hide the mechanics of uh, finance, mechanics of security, and the agreements and deals that happen behind the scenes for your servers, right? It's a contract that you sign. Versus in Web3, you are only limited by what you can contribute to the network. You can either contribute to the code base directly and say, I need our storage to be able to do these things,
Mm.
right? Or to verifiably perform these actions. But you can't expect that from AWS, right? But you can enforce it in a decentralized network. And so, let's say Filecoin's block explorer does not give all the information that's needed around a deal, right? You can get the transparency. So the benefits around decentralizing storage are like transparency, data ownership, resiliency, censorship resistance, all of which have to be enforced in law in Web2 storage, but are enforced by code in Web3.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And am I so to achieve this decentralized storage, you guys launched the Arcana as a blockchain, and you launched the alpha testnet in December last year. Is that right?
Yeah,
And so how has this been going? How was the launch? How are things developing in that area? And how do you so let's talk about the tech a little bit. How do you achieve this decentralized storage and how does it work on Arcana?
absolutely. So we initially started off with just storage.
Mhm.
and realized that the benefits that people expect with decentralized storage cannot just purely be achieved through decentralizing the storage layer, right? It needs additional services to be built on top, and that's where we now primarily operate in at the data layer, where you can store on Arcana, Filecoin, IPFS, or even AWS if you choose, as long as the data flows through the network. And what this looks like are the three services that we have, right? One is auth, which allows you to onboard users with just the Gmail, Facebook, Reddit, GitHub, Twitch, etc., or even email if you don't want to disclose social identities, right? So it's a very Web2 login experience for Web3 users. And second is our storage, which is end-to-end encrypted, decentralized, and the third part is our access control, where you have on-chain access policies being enforced. And what this means is, let's say I have created a file or a document and I store it on the network, and then I say, Ian needs access to this. So I add you to the access list. And when you request for this piece of data, it is checked by the network, ensuring you have the right permissions, and then the file is given to you, right? And nowhere in this entire process do you have to check with a server to give you the keys, right? It's completely enforced on the blockchain, and built on top of this framework of DIDs, which are decentralized identifiers, which if you have seen Jack's Web 5 spoke a lot about, right? DIDs and verifiable credentials. So that is the bedrock of this, where it's interoperable. You can define identities to files.
Beta features in a second, but one of the most interesting parts of this for me, and I think for dapp developers overall, is the social logins. You nailed it there when you said Web 2 experience in Web 3 regarding logins. So for me, this is a no-brainer in dapps, and I've seen many dapps do really well that have provided easy logins, like on the Wax blockchain, for example. You've got cloud login. It's super easy. Everything's hidden in the background, like you said, and that's also what Fuse is all about. Is we believe we don't, there's no need for people to have to understand 50 million different blockchains and different wallets. It should just be made very simple for them. So this idea of social logins, you quickly went through the list of how dapp developers could integrate. Let's unpack this a bit more, Arvind. I really want to get into this. So firstly, tell us how these social logins work for dapp
Mhm.
projects.
Absolutely. So the fundamental cryptography behind enabling this sort of experience is something called as secret sharing, right? It is how do you allow nodes to store data and reconstruct this piece of information without colluding with each other, right? Or compromising the network. So it's called distributed key generation. And these nodes store parts of the keys, and this is rotated every couple of seconds so that no one node stores that key share for a longer time. And then the user is able to prove themselves and request these shares and reconstruct them on the client side, right? And of course, this is all handled by the SDK. So you would use a provider like say Gmail, Facebook, or any auth mechanism, and then your keys get assigned to you. There are always a buffer of keys in the network of public private keys, and then all the public keys get assigned to your email ID, which is the identifier. And then you can then use this email as a proof in the future to get these keys again. So they're always on the network. You can fetch them anytime that you want. And on the user level, the keys are managed by the SDK, where they're not exposed to the developer. They're exposed only through providers. And then the user signs transactions and submits messages to the blockchain, right? And based on your design goals, you can either show them everything, where this is a message you're signing, this is the contract you're interacting with, etc. Or you
Yeah.
can abstract away everything and say, click this button, right?
Yeah,
Which could
no.
be useful if you're building a game
Yeah.
where your metadata is getting updated, right? Or you're doing a transfer. You don't need to know how much is the gas, what contract is it talking to, what NFT it is, etc.
Okay, cool. So in the wild then, if you're a dapp developer and you integrate with Arcana, you can fundamentally allow users to onboard using which social logins, Arvind? Is it like you mentioned Facebook, Reddit, Twitter? How many options have they got here?
So we have about 5 at the moment,
Mhm.
but we will keep adding more as we get demand. Any mechanism that will expose an email ID, and in the future we'll support even usernames as well as phone numbers if you choose. But at the moment, about these 4, 5 social logins and email, which is a very passwordless experience. You enter your email and you get a link. You click on that link and you're logged in.
Nice. I mean, Gmail's got about 1.5 billion users, Arvind, so that's a pretty good place to start with onboarding, I would say, right? I mean, for
Yeah.
me, this is a no-brainer. And um, yeah, I just think we have to go in this direction in order for dapps to onboard more users as well. So in
Yeah,
the
it's also
wild,
important to be careful when we do this, right? Because for us, it took a long time to build the cryptography and the network being able to power this experience. And we have seen some absolutely terrible ways that some of the developers have this feature where they just back it up to your Google Drive or iCloud.
wow. Oh,
Right?
tell us about this then, Arvind. Tell us about the horror stories you're seeing then with incorrect application. Like that sounds pretty interesting.
So it ranges from them just getting the keys, storing it on the device, and encrypting it with a 4 or 6 digit PIN code, right?
Okay.
Or even just exposing it in plain text to the developer, where the developer
Mhm.
has the potential to misuse it if they need, right? They
Oh,
might not act on it immediately, but they know that maybe 6 months down the line they can just access all the keys if they need to do so. The second is they use email to log in, do the traditional auth mechanism, and then they generate the keys and then tell the user enter a password, right? And they enter a password and then they encrypt it and store it on their uh, personal Google Drive or iCloud account. And
yeah.
sometimes they don't even ask that encryption, right? They say this is your key store file and this is your private key, and we're storing it in your Gmail. You can always retrieve it back when you need. And when the user's ID gets compromised, and then they then also lose the keys that they own, right? It is a simpler solution, but extremely dangerous
Yeah.
uh,
So
in the
how do you
long
go about educating the people? How do you work with developers to ensure that they're doing the right things then, and that, how do you get your marketing message out there for dapp developers? And also a second part to that question, am I right in thinking that if say for example there are 10 different dapps out there, a couple of
run.
games, some NFT marketplaces, maybe a few DeFi dapps, and they've all integrated with Arcana. Can
Mhm.
I then flow between those dapps using the login that I've created with Arcana really quickly and easily? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So that's in fact one of the things that we have improved on compared to other social auth products out there in the market today. So one is today if you create an account with your email ID on app A and you go to another app B and you create another account and both are on say EVM, right? With the same email ID, you'll get 2 separate wallets.
Okay.
Now, this is okay for a first time user, but if I have been in the space for a while,
Hmm.
or I've already used a couple of apps, my wallet starts accumulating value, right? It could be transactions, it could be tokens, it could be NFTs or credentials, etc. And you should be able to reuse the same value across apps, right? You shouldn't always
Yeah.
start from zero. And that's what we have been able to solve for, where as a user, you can decide, do you want to create a new account with the same email ID, or do you want to reuse the account that wallet you created for another app already that's on Arcana, right? And this is huge for a lot of people who do not want to use social auth because they'll think, if I just want to use one wallet, right? I don't want 10 different wallets and then move funds between them
Yeah.
later
Yeah.
when I want to exit it. In terms of how we are getting this message out to developers or educating users, it's primarily first making a business case for them, right? Assuming they're aligned with the need for it from a tech point of view and from a purist decentralization point of view. It is, why does this make more sense, right? One is we are now seeing Web3 go beyond just crypto and trading, right? Beyond just exchanges and dexes. And then you will start attracting Web2 users as well, especially for, say, a game, right? Play to earn games or marketplaces, creator platforms, social networks, etc. And a bulk of these users will have friction in using Web3 mechanisms that exist today, right? And you need a way to firstly capture and convert these users who would have otherwise churned.
Yep.
And then, even if, say, you as a product do not prefer to have your users continue to exist on Web2 auth, or the user might not feel more comfortable, we have seen a gradual progression in a user's journey, right? They will start off with, say, a social auth. They'll use a Gmail ID, get their keys. Then they start accumulating value in the network, right? And then they say, okay, now I need to secure my keys, right? Then they'll maybe export it and import it back into MetaMask. And then they might use a mobile wallet and set up 2FA on it. Then they might start using hot and cold wallets, right? Then they might use hardware wallets, right? So that's a progression that a user naturally goes through. So you don't need to subject a very high tier security and key management protocol on a user who's just beginning, right? Let them go through the auth, let them get used to the app, try it out, and as their value increases, they'll progressively go up the ladder of security.
Got it. So you're encouraging them to move through the stages with nice onboarding and then further education. And then it's almost like they take it into their hands over time.
Yes.
Yeah, like you don't want to give it's like giving someone a bazooka and they've never even fired a bow and arrow. You just
Exactly.
need
Let
to.
them protect themselves based on the threat and as they gain more value, right?
Yeah, that's it. Like they can work their way into it. It makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool, man. So I've got a question on Twitter, and we've kind of just answered it, but I just want to kind of go to it because it's important for Fuse and it's important for Arcana as well. So the question basically says, what will be offered to users with the cooperation of Fuse Network and Arcana Network? So what are we doing here, Arvind? Why are we joining forces? Why are we holding hands?
So one of the biggest USPs that I see with Fuse is that it allows uh, builders to build very Web2 products with Web3 rails, right? Whether it's money, data, etc. And that inherently will mean you need a very Web2 native uh, design patterns and product experience, right? And that's what we are excited to enable for Fuse, where people can come in with their email ID. People do not have to look at a transaction and approve it explicitly, right? They do not have to uh, look at a bunch of access policies that are random public addresses and then decide, okay, I want to give this document to this person or this ID to this person, right? Or this information, like a name that you want to selectively reveal, right? Instead, you can just do it through an email ID, which is more human readable.
Nice.
The second is for us as Arcana, we see a lot of creator platforms and user-owned data platforms being built, whether as marketplaces or standalone apps of social networks, or like Gumroad, where you can buy and sell content, or tokenize your NFT, tokenize your data into NFTs. And they will not perhaps want to build their own blockchain, but they will want a lot of the flexibility that comes with running their blockchain, right? And I think this is where Fuse greatly fits in, where you say, hey, here's a platform, you can fork it, you can use their existing code base, or you can just plug into what they already offer, and you can customize your entire token economics and structure to how you want to build your app.
Yep. That's a great answer, Arvin. Much better than an answer I could give, I think. But in a nutshell, I would just like to say that, yeah, I mean, this partnership means that dapp developers who choose to build on Fuse, even those who choose to come across from other networks such as Ethereum, we're EVM compatible, of course. So, yeah, you can hop over, and it just means that you're going to have a much simpler journey towards success. And I feel like you're giving yourself the best chance. You can have the coolest product in the world, but if nobody understands how to get into it, it's always going to fall flat, right? So, yeah. Let's
Absolutely.
talk about compatibility a little bit. So I've just said then that Fuse is an EVM compatible chain, but in terms of Arcana, like how does that work? Who can integrate with it? Who can work with this? Layer 2, layer 1? How does it work?
That's a great question, and it's as a conscious design choice. We do not want to be a layer one, right? We
Okay.
do not want to compete with others because there are lots of blockchains out there that do a much greater job of being a layer one, and we are not in the business of trying to get more applications to be built on hosted on our chain, right? It is we want to be a provider for multiple chains, so we are chain agnostic that way. The compatibility comes in at the auth layer, where right now we only support EVM chains. So Fuse, Polygon, Ethereum, Optimism, etc.
DNB.
And
Yeah, nice. Okay.
Binance. There are a bunch of EVM compatible
A lot of
chains.
options there, though, Arvin. Like you've got Phantom, yeah, BNB chain, Polygon, a lot of choices there. So yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And we will roll it out for other chains where they use different curves to generate keys. So it's a function of supporting that curve rather than anything else. Uh, so we'll add that. And the second layer of compatibility comes in if someone wants to build on our private NFTs, where we need to have bridges between Arcana chain and that second chain. So, and that currently is open for about 3 to 4 chains, EVM chains. We will add those bridges down the line to other chains as well. And the storage is chain agnostic. You can be on any chain and continue using our storage and access control.
Nice. Okay. At the beginning of the session, I started with my negativity about the crypto market, but then I pulled it up by saying that this is a builder's market, and I truly do believe that as well. And obviously, the market conditions have turned a little bit sour. What's your thoughts right now? We did an AMA yesterday, and we had Robert Miller in here from Fuse, and he was saying that he's been looking at some analytics recently, and actually, there's a huge sort of developers are running towards the companies that can provide them with the tools. How do you see the current climate of the market? How do you see the next kind of 2 years playing out in regards to dapps, Web3? What's your opinion on things right now, other than being a little bit like, oh no, all my tokens are down the toilet? Forget about all that. How else do you feel?
I think first on the builder side, everything is drastically cheaper, right? Whether you want to engage with
Point.
sponsorships, hackathons, grants, there is it is much more priced accurately as opposed to the inflated prices you had to do and compete with other projects, right? Uh, the second is you can slow down a bit on short-term dev and features that you're building and focus slightly on the longer term. So the impact on the velocity is more in tune with the vision of the project, and then that reflects on your partners as well, right? Earlier, if it's too noisy, then all dev resources are really hogged up, and integrations take time, co-building takes time. But now people have more time to evaluate, okay, these are really valuable partners for the long term. So you can really solidify some of these strategic partnerships much more easily in this market. Of course, there are drawbacks as well, because if the token is down, then you have fewer projects who have the runway or the appetite to uh, focus on this because they are in survival mode, right?
Yeah.
That caveat definitely exists. What definitely takes a hit are business models and projects centered around speculation, right? So if you're a DeFi app, there are only certain use cases that are relevant in a bear market. Most of the others only happen in a bull market. Then your usage goes down, there's not much you can do. If you're a play-to-earn game and your token economics is based on getting new people to buy the tokens, then that essentially breaks your token model, right? So those will be definitely severely impacted. So as a result, what we will now see is more sustainable token models in gaming. We will see more non-speculative products being built, and I see a big growth now. We'll see a big growth now in more social and consumer apps that are using blockchain at an infra layer and then building something far better than what they're currently used to. Right? It could be for content, it could be for creators, it could be for fan engagement, ticketing, etc. And I think all of these that do not use the value of the token itself as an incentive to use the product being really coming out of this cycle in the next 2-3 years.
I really agree with you here, and I really hope that is the case of what happens. And like I said at the earlier on about how we kind of went a bit fast and got wrapped up in DeFi, and these things are great when the market's booming and everything's working well. But as we've seen more recently this year, we've seen this domino effect almost of all this innovation and building has kind of fell over on itself because it just perhaps the links between it weren't correct. And yeah, we're seeing this domino effect. But yeah, I truly believe that now is a time for serious builders to step out and make their mark. And I'm
Yeah, this
excited about
happens in every cycle, right?
it.
Let's say 100 people join in a bull market, maybe 95 leave, 5 stay back, and with the learnings of what went right and wrong, they build out great products, right? And in the next wave, another 100 people join, 95 leave. So you keep adding 5-10% every cycle, and then that starts compounding.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I read yesterday, I think it was Matty Greenspan was saying that, anybody who does make it through this market will see a tremendous upside, but for the reasons that we're talking about as well. All right, cool. Arvin, let's get into how. So we've mentioned all these amazing features that dapp developers can use to create better onboarding and data storage for their end user. So how do they do that? You mentioned an SDK earlier.
Mhm.
So if I'm a dapp developer out there, how should I start to get involved with you guys and start to look at what
Yeah.
options you've got?
It's very similar to Fuse, Ian. We have kept our onboarding extremely simple. It takes literally just about 30 minutes to integrate our SDK. You can go to dashboard.arcana.network, you sign up, configure your app, download the SDK, and then we have the docs on docs.arcana, and you can choose the auth SDK in isolation, or you can use it alongside our storage and access. So there is that flexibility. And we are about to launch our testnet in the next week or two, and you can either use our current alpha testnet or wait for the beta where we have a more robust auth and wallet and the private NFTs features that are launching alongside it. And since we're in testnet, it's free to use. We will have ample, generous credits given to projects that we are excited by, and also a grants program that will announce for builders over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, these three SDKs, 2-3 SDKs that we have, and the experience is very Web2 like, that we have made a conscious choice of that. The blockchain, the tokens have to be abstracted away, not just from the user, but from the developer as well. And we'll accept fiat, some whitelisted stable coins and tokens that you can pay through. It's a pay-as-you-go model with fixed pricing so that if the token price goes up, your bills don't go up either.
Nice.
Right.
Nice. All right, cool. It sounds almost too good to be true, Arvind. I'm gonna go and push a few people in the direction to check it out. So you've mentioned NFTs a couple of times, and I have on purpose ignored you, and now I am going to ask you about this. So Arcana did a giveaway of NFTs. It was a couple of, I think it was wrapped XAR tokens. I'm not going to lie, I don't really understand what you guys have done. Please tell me all about this.
Absolutely. So this was when we wanted to incentivize some of our early supporters, people who have been there for a long time, and we intentionally did not want to launch a token before we hit certain milestones, right? And in the meantime, we are thinking of how do we uh, play into the utilities of an NFT with this token, and then thought, what if people could get NFTs that are essentially vouchers, right, for your token
Right.
that's going to be launched, and then airdrop those NFTs, and you can then redeem those NFTs, burn them, and claim the tokens when they go live.
Ah, okay. That's pretty cool. So you did a giveaway, right, of these?
Yeah, we are split it into two phases. The first phase is the drop that we just did,
Mm.
where you could get either 100, 50, or 25 XAR token vouchers. And this is an OpenSea collection. So if you missed it, you can go and buy it on OpenSea if someone is selling it.
Okay.
And uh, this phase two will start sometime towards the end of the month or early next month, where there'll be a couple of other activities that they can participate in beyond this. It'll also be an opportunity for us to seed our ambassador program, which has some really cool NFTs planned.
Nice. Nice. Exciting stuff. Okay, cool. So people can look out on your social feeds for that. And then I saw something else that you guys had acquired, somebody called Small Dev Tools. What does this acquisition mean for you guys? And more importantly, what does it mean for developers and end users?
That's a great question, and I then think I keep going back to our vision, right? For us, it has always been around helping developers give users control and ownership over the data, and whatever tools we need to be able to help them do that is in our purview of ensuring that happens, right? So we're always on the lookout for uh, tools like small dev tools that do very niche targeted stuff without ads, without compromising on your privacy,
Yeah.
and help you get your job done, right? And so this is just one of the first few that we have started. We will do more such micro acquisitions of tools that developers search for, like, and has a very clutter free and good UX, and just do it for the benefit of the community, right? We will not monetize it, we will not put ads on it. It will live on its own property, and yeah, it'll be available for anybody to use.
Nice, very nice. And one question I have is that when you're kind of speaking to development teams, to DApp teams, what kind of things do they say that they require? I mean, obviously the social logins and data storage is great, but do you get any more information from them about what they're looking for? I don't know if that's a good question, but do you know what I mean? Like what sort of, it's almost like
Mhm.
secondary research, just talking
Yeah.
to them. So yeah, does it make sense? What kind of things do they want?
Yeah, two things that have stood out so far, which some projects already started to solve for, is interoperability of data,
Hmm.
right? So today, it is possible for you to decentralize, store, show ownership, but really no one particular protocol has taken off in being this interoperable uh, format of committing data and moving it to another app, right? It was a vision sold to us in the beginning where, oh,
Yeah.
imagine you're a Twitter user and then you go to Facebook and then you can just import all the data that you've created on your social graph, etc. And
God,
then
yeah.
now you can start using it, right? So that is one.
Hmm?
Second are around private NFTs. In fact, that feature came up with our frequent conversation with brands, builders, Web2 founders who are trying to build in Web3, that NFTs are more than just JPEGs of monkey images and cats, right?
Yes, they
Uh,
are. Yes, they are.
they are becoming a fundamental data structure. Of anytime you want to think of tokenizing data, you would want it to be an NFT. And of course, there are no differing standards of NFT, but there's still some variations of the underlying NFT contract itself. And then you would logically have some data that are more valuable than others, either for exclusivity or because that's where the IP is stored, right? If I'm selling, say, a course on or a PDF on how to growth hack your 100 followers, for example,
Okay.
and I want to sell it to only a select audience that buy it, right? Or only to my community,
Mhm.
and that means I cannot just store that file on IPFS and link it as an NFT. It needs to be encrypted, it needs to be secured, and only accessible by the owner of the NFT, right? Or if I'm a brand,
that wants to incentivize the community of fans, or if I'm a movie producer and or an actor and want to
Yeah.
engage with my fans, I want to tokenize some of the IP that I own. And just one second. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Some of the IP that I want to monetize, and it's a big deal for these brands to protect their IP, right?
Yeah.
They invest billions of dollars every year that they'll not just put it on a blockchain that anybody can see.
Sure, yeah.
So they need these tools to secure them and ensure only the right people who have the right to use it get access to it. And we've already seen a couple of partners who are building on this exact use case where data is more selectively public.
It's becoming a trend as well. We're seeing more and more brands, as you say, using NFTs as a marketing vessel rather than a JPEG. And I think there's a big misconception around NFT technology and what it will be used for. And I hope, again, we've said this builder's market, we're going to see some really good iterations of how, like you've said it as well, NFT ticketing. I think these things are very cool and they make a lot of sense in the world. So I'm really hoping we can power through this kind of hype monkey face phase and get into the
Yeah.
more utility driven phase. Right, Arvind, we're getting close to the end of the session. I've asked you a whole bunch of questions, and now I'm going to basically ask you, is there anything I haven't asked you that you really want to get out there about the service, the platform? This is your moment. If there's nothing, that's fine. But yeah, is there anything I've not asked you or anything you want to get out there?
No, I think we covered quite a bit. Just want to say that beyond building towards our vision for Arcana, etc., we do a lot of work for the community uh, through mentorship, grants, introductions to the network. So if anybody is looking to build or is an aspiring founder, do reach out. We have uh, the intention and the time to help more people transition.
And what's the best ways for people to get in touch with you, Arvind? Is it Twitter? Is it Discord? How should they reach out to you?
Yep, Twitter would be best. It's Aravindh underscore Kumar.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can DM us on our Arcana Twitter handle.
All right. Cool, cool, cool. All right, guys, we'll wrap this up there, I think. So I just want to thank all the listeners and mostly to the main man today, Arvind. He's done a great job of explaining what Arcana is all about, most importantly, why it's so beneficial for dapp devs and developers within the Fuse ecosystem. So thank you, Arvind. Thank you for your time. Maybe you want to share some last thoughts or just say thank you to the listeners and those who are tuning.
Thank you so much, Ian. This has been a fantastic chat, and look forward to working with Fuse and your ecosystem.
Awesome, man. And I'm sure we'll talk again because as things develop in this world, we always have a reason to come back and speak more because things change so goddamn fast in this world. Who knows where you'll be in 12 months' time? So we can keep talking. From our side, Fuse is delighted to announce this integration with Arcana. I think it's a great move forward. And for Fuse dapp developers, it really shows that you should really start taking it seriously when you're looking. There's a lot of choices out there for building right now, but I would implore you to come and check out Fuse and the tools that are available to you there. So yeah, project teams you can add social account logins to your wallets if you find it useful, and then you can store data and define access to it completely on chain. This is all good stuff. So thanks again to everyone. We'll be back next week on Discord with more AMAs and exclusive content for all the lovely fusers. Keep it locked on Twitter and Discord for all the updates. And remember to fire those questions over in advance so we can ask them. Once again, thank you, Arvind. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time today, man. And I hope you have a great day. And
Likewise,
yeah,
Ian. Thank you.
catch you all soon. Take care, everybody.